1898. Famine relief in Rajasthan. After a detailed survey of various districts, on Gurudev's instructions, Arvind Bhai, Morarji Bhai, Mohan Bhai, Keshu Bhai, Ram Bhai and others selected Barmer and Jaisalmer districts for relief work. Due to lack of roads, these areas were difficult to supply with provisions, and yet they were selected for that very reason. The relief work began in May 1969, with Barmer as the main camp. The state government also provided assistance. Since the climate was suited for bajra, purchases for the same commenced from Agra, Kanpur and Bhatinda. Dispatches to sub-camps were made from the main camp at Barmer. In each such sub-camp, the volunteers stayed for 3 to 4 days and provided relief for about 2 to 3,000 people per day. The crowds were so huge that the bajra was required to be distributed up to 1 a.m. at night. Shri Girdhar Bapa of Virpur arranged for such additional expenses. Among the people who came, about 25% asked for free supply. The scarcity, though in a mild form, had been there since the last 7 years, and due to their staple food bajri not being available, people were subsisting on jwari. Rajasthan has a chronic water shortage, and therefore the use of milk and tea was out of question. The volunteers either took black tea or used the milk of the she camel. Even those days, a pot of water would cost as much as 3 rupees, and the local people used to bring water on camels to sell it at the campsite. The volunteers used to purchase water to slacken the thirst of those needy people who had to stand in the queue for several hours in the scorching heat of the sun. Naturally, these volunteers had to forego the luxury of a daily bath, and they could hardly bathe once in 15 days when they visited the main camp at Barmer. The problem of meals too had to be tackled in a peculiar manner. They carried bajri roti, chutney and onions in their shoulder bags and ate whenever and wherever they became acutely hungry. For dinner, they had to sit up in a room fully boarded up so as to avoid the desert getting inside their belly along with the meal. They could eat green vegetables only when they visited Barmer. At such times, a meal of khichdi and vegetables was considered to be a royal feast. The desert was so stark, barren and sandy that a timid person could not stay there for even a few hours. Bhimada had the strongest sandy winds, and when the volunteers would wake up early in the morning, they would find their bedding and even bodies sprinkled with a fine coating of sand. Under these stringent conditions, the volunteers served for 4 long months devotionally and with full faith and dedication, bearing all sorts of hardships and deprivations. That year, the Barmer district happened to have good rains, and the farmers were lent tractors to till their lands. When the rains arrived, Rajasthan assumed a festive mood, and the camp concluded on the Janmashtami day. During the relief work, Pujya Shri was at Ram Kumar Mill's guest house in Bangalore. Keshubai kept him fully briefed on the Barmer relief works. On 11th July 1969, he had written, "Bapu, due to the lack of rains, people are in a very bad condition. Please do something about it." By coincidence, it was raining in Bangalore, and on reading this letter, Gurudev went out, looked at the sky, and said, "What are you doing here? Go and rain in Barmer." On the night of the 13th, he said, "Phone Barmer and see if everything is all right." When he was told all truck lines to Barmer are disrupted, he said, "Never mind, God will do the rest," and went to sleep. In the Barmer district, the volunteers were getting ready to return to the main camp after distributing bajra to the Harsani village. Suddenly, strong and gusty winds started blowing and brought about heavy rains, accompanied by thunderclaps and lightning. Ram Baba, Ram Bhai, Tribhuvan Bhai, and others overjoyed and danced in the rain while chanting a dhoon with Gurudev's name. They postponed their journey back to camp and slept for the night over there itself. At midnight, Tribhuvan Bhai woke up to drink water. In the dim light of the lantern, when he went to take water from the pot, a snake bit him on the right foot, and he cried out in pain. All woke up abruptly and saw a 4-inch long black snake hissing near the matka. All of them beat it dead on the spot, and pressing above the bite on Tribhuvan Bhai's foot, they bled out all the venom from his system and tied a cord tightly around the wound and near his knee joint, and after rendering first aid, took him to the hospital at Barmer. Meanwhile, Tribhuvan Bhai was shaking with terror and sweating profusely. Suddenly, he remembered the words of Gurudev when they were sent to Barmer. Whatever happens, none can harm you. Do your duty sincerely. At this recollection, he gathered courage and hope. After examining, the surgeon said he cannot be saved, and on examination of the snake, to determine the degree of his poison, the doctor lost all hopes. Rambhai put the dead snake in a sack and took it back to camp. The devout volunteers never gave up hope. Remembering Gurudev's name, Keshubai kept applying a piece of ice to the affected spot. After 3 hours, the green color of the venom faded, and by evening, Tribhuvan Bhai was discharged from the hospital. Prior to this, the snake was placed in a glass jar in a closed room in front of Gurudev's photo. Next day, when the room was opened, a terribly foul smell came out of it, and the jar containing the snake was broken into two, with the snake shredded to pieces. Chelubhai spoke out with pent-up emotions. Tribhuvan Bhai, this jar symbolized your body, and by transferring the calamity from your body to this glass jar, Gurudev has saved your life. When Gurudev learnt about all of this, by post in Bangalore, he said with a deep feeling of gratitude, Tribhuvan was saved by God. Despite having been bitten by a venomous snake, how can those who are doing God's own work ever come to any harm? What humility! The Barmer relief work and Tribhuvan Bhai's incident assured the devotees once again that though he might not be physically among them, in subtle form, Gurudev would always be with them to guide and protect. Despite the serenity of the Bangalore atmosphere, Gurudev rarely looked happy. He seemed immersed in thoughts. At times, when he attempted to walk a little, he soon became breathless. Thus, due to lack of improvement in his health, a cardiologist, Dr. Parameshwaran, was called. The doctor, with a view to note his reflexes, told him, "Please walk a little." But when he started a brisk walk, the doctor stopped him and said, "Slowly, slowly, there is no hurry at all," and added softly, "Your walk is as fast as your thought processes." Pujya Shri merely smiled. Dr. Parameshwaran was a devout person, and recognizing Gurudev's saintliness, he kept himself available for help whenever he was called. Once, when Gurudev complained of the pain in the stomach, he said, "Do not worry, it is just a little gas." Gurudev said, "Why should I worry when Parameshwar incarnate is treating me?" The whole atmosphere was lighted by his pun. After a while, he said, "My only worry is about these girls, Damu and Parvati. They have been my companions in joy and sorrow, and they have been spared no efforts in my service." Dr. Parameshwaran expounded his philosophy. He recited a Sanskrit couplet which means, despite having the king of the mountains as father-in-law, a friend like Kuber, the treasurer of gods, and a son like Ganesh, the banisher of all evils, the Mahesh himself subsists on alms, thus only gods will prevail. Leave them to God and do not worry. After a little chit-chat, the doctor departed. On the 29th of September of August 1969, he was in a bad shape right from the morning, and said, "Call Devkaran from Bombay to come here by 11 a.m. tomorrow, and if he so desires, let him bring along Dr. Nathwani and Dr. Samani." Gurudev had a heart attack on the same day, and Dr. Parameshwaran and Dr. Giriraj rendered a lot of help. It was essential for him to get some sleep. At midnight he was given an injection for sleep, yet it failed to produce the desired result. At 2 a.m., Gurudev told Dr. Pareshwaran, "All the pills and injections are working on the doctors only." Dr. Pareshwaran said, "Please, try to sleep." In contrast, at Shivpuri, despite severe pains, he had slept without an injection. But now, when all medical means failed, at Dr. Parameshwaran's request, he closed his eyes and fell asleep. The next day, Dev Karan Bhai came with Dr. Nathwani at 10:30 a.m. Then exactly at 11:05 a.m., in the presence of as many as 5 doctors, Pujya Shri got a severe attack of paralysis and fainted. The entire left side was affected. At noon, he was shifted to a nursing home. Next day, Dr. Parameshwaran asked, "Did you sleep at night?" "Yes, I slept soundly," Gurudev replied. "Thank God," said Dr. Parameshwaran, and added, "On account of worries about you, I could hardly sleep at night." After a day's stay in the nursing home, he was shifted to Bombay. Later, after 10 days, he went to Pune for rest. Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 99. Famine Relief Work in Kach, Surendra and Banaskantha. In 1970, the grim scepter of famine fell on Kach, Surendra and Banaskantha. Since Pujya Shri was then in Pune, after obtaining instructions from him, Arvind Bhai, Keshu Bhai, Vallabh Bhai and others surveyed these areas on behalf of the Shri Sadguru Seva Sangh and then briefed him about the situation. If Gurudev were to agree to undertake the work, then CARE, the Cooperative for American Relief Everywhere, agreed to supply 4.5 crores worth of provisions for the assistance of the people of Gujarat unconditionally. The CARE organization would provide bulk milk powder. The packers and container supplies were ready to do the packing and sealing work free of cost. CARE would also bear the shipping charges, and the whole scheme to start relief work in January took shape in Pune. As soon as the first consignment arrived, it was brought before Gurudev. As instructed by him, it was to prepare sukri by mixing corn flour, milk powder, ghee and jaggery, then puri and shakkarpara by adding salt and spice instead of jaggery. However, later it was decided to prepare only sukri to suffice for 10 lakh people per day. The central government waived custom duty and also undertook to dispatch the goods to their destination. The Sadguru Seva Sangh had the responsibility of preparing and distributing the sukri. Government of Gujarat agreed to bear parts of the cost. After everything was decided, Gurudev reminded, "In the works of public service, renunciation, generosity, non-discrimination and selfless service are of prime importance." He added, "Have firm faith and dedication unto God. He will look after the undertaking and see that the funds are available. Let your conscience, in its selflessness and purity, be your true guide. People who are slothful and jealous can find faults even in the works of Mahatmas. Ignore them. This work is like dealing in coals. But be careful. Never mind if our hands are blackened by work, but our faces and our conscience should be spotless and shining with self-confidence and the satisfaction of having performed our duty. All who are born are destined to die, king, commoner, or fakir. What will remain for the memory will be our name and fame, either good, bad, or indifferent. So do your duty and worship God, for the man who neither worships nor renders service has no right to live." Keshubhai asked, "Bapu, why are we often afflicted by floods or famine?" Gurudev: "Partly it is due to the influence of Kali, and partly due to our own deeds. Mercy, compassion, and proper conduct are all things of the past. One who has hoarded grains wishes that there should be famine so that his illegal stock he can become a millionaire. In all other sectors, the thinking is similar. Such thoughts generate evil vibrations and they in turn affect the weather. Therefore, if we wish to be happy and prosperous as a nation, we will first have to purify our thought process, set aside our selfishness, and pray to God that our country may not suffer from such calamities, so that we can be free to devote our energies to constructive works. The ills of my country are my ills. How can the doctors cure them? I am sad because we have to import our food. In reality, we do not lack food. What we lack is the compassion in our hearts. Doubts were raised about the feasibility of preparing and distributing sukri on such a massive scale. He told them not to worry and start the work with the name of God on their lips and that firm wherever he would be. He would continue to pray for their success and take active interest in their works. On the 1st of January 1970, the work of transport and distribution of sukri began. The kitchen was kept working for 24 hours a day, and 60 jeeps and 15 trucks were pressed into service to send sukri to thousands in 3 districts, and each person was to receive 100 grams of the same. The needy were also supplied bajri, 5 kg per youngster and 9 kg per adult. A total of 6,000 volunteers were busy in managing the relief operations. Initially, people were reluctant to eat sukri, but gradually they liked it so much that they thrived on it. The nourishing and healing effect of the benign sukri improved their health and made their minor illnesses disappear. The sukri fulfilled its name, literally sukh, happiness, and di, giver. The relief work continued with sustained enthusiasm and without interruption. During these 10 months, none of the volunteers was ever afflicted either in person or by the illness of any one of his family members. Despite continuous movement of scores of vehicles, none met with an accident. How can there be mishap or misery when the divine saint like Gurudev has given a guarantee for its success and security? Jai Bhagwan.
Sarve Sukhina Santu, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukhamapnuyat.